Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe with lessons in person and personalized. Instruments including guitars and amps, horns, strings for instruments, and a myriad of music and sound equipment. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe.
Order. Ms. Hasty, would you lead us in the pledge?
All right. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to report that all but one member of the Board of Trustees is here. That's Frank Crawford. He is absent. And no action was taken in closed session. Comments from the board? Mr. Boone? Doug Criddle?
No comments this time.
Ms. Hasty?
Welcome back all, and welcome new ones. Glad you guys are here, and looking forward to our new year.
Thank you. Gary Criddle? Randy Rasmus?
I would just like to say thank you to staff and the Arboga folks. We had a little tour of the Arboga campus last week. Looks like they're coming along very nicely. It's very beautiful inside. I can't wait to see the auditorium completed. And so again, thank you. And it's going to be wonderful for the community there.
And I echo those remarks, and as well as Ms. Hasty's on welcoming our staffs back from whatever little vacation they were able to get in. And certainly we are hoping for a great 22-23 school term. So, do we have any recognitions? Okay. Now we have opportunity for employee organizations to address the board. Marysville Unified Teachers Association.
Good evening. So, I am not sitting in a car and I'm not sitting in a hotel room, so this is good news. I don't have to be zoomed in tonight. Angela Stiegel, I'm president for the Marysville Unified Teachers Association, and to start off this evening, I would like to thank the district and especially my new site admin. There are a lot of us that are at the AP Institute this week, and we are learning a great deal, and it is some very valuable professional development. And to have a new admin team step into things and make a last-minute addition to the roster for our AP Institute, along with some of Jennifer Pasalia's cohorts and colleagues. So thank you to all of them for making that happen. We do have a sizable contingency there, especially considering that we do do have a short list of AP offerings considering the size of our schools, but there are people there from Marysville High and Lyndhurst High, so that is much appreciated. I would also like to acknowledge the fact that there are a lot of people in the outside world, not in this building right now, but there are a lot of people in the outside world that have the firm belief that teachers have the summer off, and I would like to dispel that rumor because I, for one, just drove in here at about the speed of sound as the AP Institute went until 4:30 and meeting started at 5:30, so not bad, I made it, 5:27. But the teachers for this district and districts all across the state and across this country work tirelessly throughout the summer. They do a great deal of professional development, they do curriculum development, they do collaboration, and there is an awful lot of reflection and planning that goes on during that time. So it is a complete misnomer to think that we have the summer off, and much goes for our weekends as well. As far as this evening's agenda, there are a couple items that I did turn in comment cards for in the hopes that I will not forget to make those comments when we get there. But one thing that has been a particular concern from the last board agenda and this current board agenda, and this is not personal, so please do not think so. We'll go with titles to try to get that point across even more so. But we're looking at some contract extensions for superintendent and assistant superintendent. And there have been some questions put forward to the district about some of the governance codes, Brown Act codes, Ed code that go along with that. And I would just like to reiterate to the board, because I see that these items are back on the agenda this evening, I really have zero understanding of how you could possibly approve an addendum tonight that has never been seen by the public. And I say that not just as president of the teachers union and not just because of the offices that it involves, it could be any of them, but I think this really sets up a bit of a dangerous precedent. And I think, being that I am someone who has voted for at least one of the people on the board and consistently votes for board members because I reside in this community, I think you could have some constituents having some serious questions about that as well. The addendum has been asked about, and we have been told there was no addendum. I'm going to take a wild guess that after closed session that there now is such an addendum in existence, because I would have no clue how you could just come in here and on the agenda approve an addendum that doesn't exist in writing. So I'm going to assume that that now exists in writing per closed session. That is a really slippery slope. There is a 72 hours. I do realize that we have legal here tonight. I don't think it's a mistake that he's here either, with this being on the agenda and the fact that we've asked questions about it. I'm just going to assume. But we're playing a dangerous game with Brown Act and Ed Code and governance within that. And I don't think that that's a place we want to go. I'm going to go with the fact of the best of intentions, and I'm going to assume that we're not trying to do anything that is necessarily nefarious or anything like that, but I really would prefer that, and I think the board would, and I think your community would, and I believe the district probably would as well, prefer that we are beyond 100% transparent in these types of things. We are when it comes to the teachers' contracts, and so I would just think that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I just think that to unnecessarily create an issue or create a problem when it could be something that you could easily put an addendum out there and give people their 72 hours and their opportunity to ask questions. Because I have been told that with it being on the agenda the way it is, that people could put in a comment card and they could come up here and ask questions. But without the actual addendum attached and without the public having seen the addendum, how would they know to get up here and ask you anything? And how would they know what to ask? How would they know what input to give to their respective board members before this meeting tonight considering the written addendum didn't exist and wasn't put out in the public. And so I just think that it does not bode well for all of us. You know, and I include myself as part of the district. I'm an employee here. I reside here. I just think there are easier ways to do things, and we could easily have a conversation this evening and then a vote later on. I know that that's not the way the board particularly likes to do things, but I think you could easily avoid an issue. Along those lines as well, like I said, there are a couple of other issues within the agenda that I will speak to when we get there, but also, we have already mentioned at a board meeting before, I think it may have been Mr. Criddle that mentioned it. If I'm wrong, please bear with me. But we do absolutely send our thoughts out to everybody who is already being impacted by fires, and send all of our strength and well wishes to all of our firefighters and all of our public servants, law enforcement, and all of our medical personnel that are aiding in all of that. I sincerely hope also that after the conclusion of the meeting this evening, at least one board member may ask Ms. Pasalia for something called a scattergram, so that maybe we can work towards getting this whole idea and this concept of teachers getting an automatic raise every single year without negotiations kind of put to bed once and for all. Because if you need that document, I have that document along with our salary schedule, because it is patently untrue that teachers in this district just automatically get a raise every year. So we would kind of like to get that one put to bed, nipped in the bud before we start this school year and we start negotiations again. So thank you for your time and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Operating Engineers Local Union Number 3. California School Employees Associations Number 326 and 648. Association of Management and Confidential Employees. Supervisory Unit. I was trying to see. Now we have updates from the superintendent's staff.
Good evening. I don't have much to update other than a big shout out to the business service and operation departments. They're busy getting the school sites cleaned and projects completed before the next school year. Thank you.
Education services.
Good evening. With the beginning of the school year, just 3 short weeks away, our staff has been pretty busy getting ready for the kiddos and the teachers to return. First, want to start by letting you know that the professional development plan for both new and experienced teachers has been finalized thanks to the efforts by first initially Alicia Wright, who, as you know, has now joined the high school on the administrative team. But those efforts have been continued by Amy Stratton and Lori Guy, who are here, so I just want to give them a shout out. Like good instruction, one size does not fit all in the classroom, and we take a very similar approach to the way that we offer PD to our teachers. So whether you're an experienced teacher, you're a novice teacher, we think it's important to offer opportunities for growth based on needs as well as interests. So congratulations to our Ed Services staff for having to put that together. We're also excited about the recent training that a cadre of staff members attended in, of all places, Nashville, Tennessee. Conscious Discipline, which I'm sure you all remember having approved that field trip. We had over 25 people, I think, attend. It was leadership training to try to help safeguard the wellness of our students across the district. So staff members, or I should say leaders, dug deeply into skills and areas that really help to bring about a greater consciousness about how best to serve our students and their well-being for not just the students themselves, but as well as for staff members and families. And as you know, our TK3 literacy plan is a bold initiative that we are launching this year to really help to elevate the possibilities and the literacy for our students TK3. That is no small undertaking. We're excited about it, but we also know that it's going to be much work, but we're ready to delve deeply into that work. We're in it to win it. That's something I like to say. And lastly, I just want to take a moment to thank the board once again and thank Dr. Israni for the opportunity to join Marysville Joint Unified. I'm exceedingly happy about it. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and join the great efforts of our staff. And I just wanted to let you know once again personally. Thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome. Personnel.
I'm usually really loud, so sometimes I don't need a mic, but thank you. So good evening, Board and Superintendent. Thank you as well for allowing me to join the team here in the district. I'm really excited. I'm more officially in the office now after a quick 50th birthday out-of-state trip last week. I'm in the office and here to stay and very excited to join the team. I want to thank publicly Kathleen Hansen, who was former administrator, still working in administrative capacity on an itinerant basis, helping us collaborate with the principals and fill vacancies. Our staff's been really hard at work trying to make sure we have qualified teachers in front of students when we start school. We have filled over 91 teaching vacancies since the spring and 34 classified vacancies and continue to hire folks on a daily basis. So we've been real busy. That process is pretty involved from the site level, the applying and interviewing to getting their clearance and paperwork to getting them onboarded. So hats off to our staff and the principals working in collaboration with our office to get everybody hired.
Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Israni.
Thank you so much. It has been a very busy summer, and I do echo the words from our friends here that we have been watching. Summer school was fantastic, and again, a big shout out to the summer school principals that did a tireless job in providing that opportunity for children, and for Greg Taylor for the transportation. For the first time, we had transportation for our children in the summer, which was absolutely wonderful. So that is an opportunity we want to celebrate going forward. Also want to welcome all our new administrators. As you can see, we have a big full cabinet now. Last year, we hobbled along, 3 of us, carrying the rest of the departments, and it was no easy feat, but we had some great people in the trenches. Always have had leaders that stepped up and picked up the weight as well. And yes, a big shout out to the professional development plan coming up for teachers as well as for administrators. August 1st and 2nd is for administrators. Would like to invite the board to please come by and see the fun retreat that we have planned for the admin. It's at Tracy's Diner. I'll send the details out again. And I believe the first day is going to be a fun show when the executive cabinet is supposed to dance and sing to open the act for everybody. So that's going to be something to watch. But apart from that, this is the first board meeting. We are all excited to start a new school year. And I just wish everybody a wonderful start to the new school year. And this is really a beautiful district. There's such good work happening, and there's so much passion that it's an honor to serve. Thank you. I'd like to just say welcome to Brian. He is in our cabinet now as Chief Technology Officer. So welcome to him as well.
Thank you. Now we have the approval of the June 28th, 2022 minutes. Do we have any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, do I hear a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion approved by Doug Criddle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Randy Rasmussen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Now we have the approval of consent agenda items. Are there any items that the board...
Excuse me, President Davis, I think we would probably have some abstentions on those minutes, because not all of the board members here today were at that meeting.
No, you're right. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Abstain.
Allison Hasty was absent, so we have a correction.
Thank you, Ray.
And I think we have another one that wasn't present.
Was Doug, you weren't here? Okay, so we have 2 abstentions.
Thank you.
So that'll be a 4-0, I think. Okay, now we're at the approval of consent agenda items. Are there any items that the board would like to pull? Okay. We have one comment card for 13.7. Ms. Stiegel?
So this is in relation to 13.7 and 13.8, but I thought it was pretty redundant to put in 2 comment cards. It's just that one is for K3 and one is for 4 or 5. So I will spare you the boredom of listening to this twice. The teachers union just has a number of concerns that we would like to voice right now to make sure that they get addressed, because I am no fool. I've been doing this a long time. I could sit up here and talk till I'm blue and you guys would never vote no on it. We all know that. And so I would just like to put on the record some of the concerns that we have within this. Some of those being, when you get into the actual nuts and bolts of things like classroom visits and walkthroughs with consultants and with admin. We have had grievance issues with that before, not just within core, not just within this, but within other grants and PD and the same types of things. So it would be nice if we could make sure that we get those things ironed out before those start, so that the union doesn't have to file grievances. Also within the teacher coaching and lesson study and program planning, there's a lot of talk within that of collaboration and the consultants collaborating with teachers and teacher planning time. I would just like to remind the board and the district that we do in fact have contract language in regards to our teacher collaboration time, that this would actually be in violation of if that was the time that was going to be used for it. And so also within this, professional development is mentioned. We have a PDC, a professional development collaborative. None of this has gone through that. And so I would just like to remind the board that we also have that piece of the puzzle to get through as well, which, on kind of a tangential but related note, we have a lot of professional development that's going on this summer and in August that is not going through the PDC, that we need to kind of make sure we get back on track with that. But like I said, I'm under no delusions that you all would vote no on any of this, but I would like to put out there that we have some concerns and some issues that we could get resolved before the school year starts or before this actually starts, so that we can avoid grievances and hard feelings all the way around, and we can actually make this something that runs smoothly as opposed to something that is less than stellar, because this is, as I see it, meant to help our students, and so we need to do our very best to make sure that we help our students as much as possible by getting some of this groundwork done beforehand. Thank you.
Dr. Asrani, would you have any comments?
No, we have a public presentation, and this is a requirement of this grant, so we'll just go to the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any other items we need to discuss or remove or table?
I had a question. On 13.7 and 13.8, the Core Academy, these are, or not Core Academy, excuse me, the Core Reading Program. Are these a renewal? Yeah, they're, okay. I'm just wondering out loud, in light of the information presented, if this is a renewal, have we had any issues of grievances in the past?
Sorry, I don't want to be some strange voice from the void. We have had informal grievances. We have had near misses on grievances. We've had things that, much like I was just talking about, we've tried to resolve as soon as they come up. My goal, my mission now is to try to resolve these issues before they come up. Kind of like the proverbial lessons learned kind of thing. That, we know we've had issues with this in the past, not just with the core issue, but there was another one we had some issues with as well. But just to put that out there, because we could actually make this run a whole lot smoother than it has in the previous year, because there were some issues last year, especially in regards to the PD and the extra time requirement that is put on teachers for this. There initially was no real plan for how to compensate teachers for that, so instead of having an informal, I made contact with the district, and managed to get it resolved before it was an informal. But we did have another informal that, like I said, got resolved relatively quickly, relatively easily, thankfully. But it would be nice if, since we know we've had those issues, and like you said, this is a renewal, we could make this run a whole lot more smoothly for this coming year. So.
Thank you for the information. The word I keep hearing is informal, so that's a good thing on both sides, because nobody wants to create an issue with that.
We have had formals, though, like I said, we had another consultant issue that we had a large formal grievance with, and so we just don't want to get into those. The more of those things we can avoid, the better off we all are. I mean, they're time-consuming on everybody's part. I mean, we have the new so-called HR guy here, and I'm sure that Gabe Simon and myself have much better things to do with our time than try to resolve informal grievances that we could just get done once and for all by sitting down and talking about these things and hammering them out beforehand.
Okay. I thank you again for the information. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that Gabe is here, and I think he's going to do a great job for us, and hopefully I'm not at the negotiation table. It's not my racket, but hopefully we can get those ironed out. My other concern is if this is time sensitive, we have a school year starting. I know that these people obviously want to get paid for their contract. We're renewing the contract, which means, hey, it's working. We're doing a good thing. I'm thinking, being an adult, we could come together, work out these grievances so that there is not an issue and move forward with this.
Great minds think alike, sir. That's exactly what I was saying. So thank you.
Hi, yes, I just want to let you know we worked with CORE last year. Any informal, formal grievances, any concerns has not been brought to me about this specific consulting firm with CORE. It went really smoothly. There was a lot of opportunity for teacher input. We welcome to speak with Angela, but I'm unaware of any concerns that we had last year with this contract.
Okay, thank you.
And not to play this game, but there were issues and concerns last year, and so that's why I'm trying to get this done now and get this taken care of so we don't have that again. They were things that, like I said, we were able to get resolved. They were kind of piecemeal. It was like one was resolved here, one was resolved over here, one was resolved here. It'd be a whole lot easier if we could just, like I said, learn from our lessons, our so-called mistakes. Last year, missteps, I prefer to say instead of mistakes, but learn from our missteps from last year and just get everything kind of buttoned up before school starts this year so that we don't have any of those issues.
Agreed. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do I hear a second? Second, Ms. Allison. Motion by Randy Rasmussen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Now we move to new business. We're at 16.1, Superintendent Contract Extension. Brian, would you bring up that contract? Oh. There's no public comment. There's no public comment. Oh. And then would Paul explain? Yes, please. Okay. There are no comments. We have no public comments.
First of all,
just granting that this whole process is a little unusual when you're considering, in this case, an addendum to the superintendent's contract or an addendum to another administrator, senior administrator's contract. There are going to be proposed compensation items. And as you may know, under revisions to the Brown Act some years ago, the obligation is for those to be deliberated upon and voted on in open session as opposed to closed session. And so we very cautiously want to make sure that the board has an opportunity to look at these and engage in its deliberation in open session. There are some non-compensation items in this addendum as well, but they primarily relate to compensation. And so since that's the bulk of this, I'm going to focus most of my comments on that as we go through. Just to emphasize what this is this is a draft document, and what this represents is a proposal that the board has not yet had an opportunity to deliberate on. So you're going to see this and you're going to have an opportunity to discuss it. I'm just going to present the proposal. It's not my proposal. Obviously, I'm carrying a message, but it is presented to you as a opening proposal from the superintendent. Superintendent's here. She can address any questions that the board has about the proposal. My intent is really just to take you through the items very quickly to show you what's there. First of all, I will just point out that the document is entitled Addendum to the Employment Contract. What that means is that, except as indicated, the rest of the superintendent's contract that was approved last year remains in place. The only thing that would change in terms of the relationship, the contractual relationship with the superintendent, would be those items that are specifically changed pursuant to this addendum. That would be the proposal. And of course, that the board deliberates on and ultimately would vote on. So the introductory paragraphs are really just standard and very similar to introductory paragraphs for the superintendent's contract. The first new item here that would be for the board to consider is a proposed extension of the contract so that it would now go through June 30th, 2025, as opposed to the current term where the contract ends June 30th, 2024. The determination as to whether that would be done or not was covered and discussed, no doubt, under the evaluation when the board considered the superintendent's evaluation and whether she was progressing at the appropriate level that a contract extension would be considered. So that's up for board discussion tonight. The next item under compensation now, and this is fully a purely open session item, the issue of first, under the existing contract from 21-22, there was an option for the board to consider granting a one-time bonus as a result of a determination as to whether the superintendent's performance warranted such a bonus, and that would be considered at the end of the school year. It is an item that relates to 21-22, and the board can consider whether the superintendent's performance was at an exemplary level such that a bonus would be provided, and the proposed number is for a 3% of the compensation, the superintendent's compensation for 21-22. Item number 2 is a proposal to change to some extent the structure of how this contract works. This is similar to changes that the district has already implemented with at least, I believe, a couple of other administrators, senior administrators, who have now a salary schedule concept embedded in their contract. And what that does is it provides a set year-over-year increase for each year under the contract for the term of the contract. Now, the percentage that's being proposed would be 3.5%, and it would go on to, it would increase the salary for the superintendent in the last school year by 3.5%, which would yield $238,050 for the 22-23 school year. And then there would be another 3.5% for year 2, 3.5% for year 3. That is the proposal. That percentage is consistent with what the board previously approved for some other of the cabinet level administrators. And what that does is you post, assuming that's approved now, you have a salary schedule. It's favored, by the way. Cal STRS on the certificated side and CalPERS on the classified side prefers to see this sort of thing on your website posted every year because it helps them determine what's PERSable or what's STRSable. And so they have a strong policy in favor of something of this nature and this type of a structure going up on your website so they can clearly see what is the history and what is going on over time with these top administrator salaries. Why? They want to make sure that there are no wrongdoing going on, like spiking to make someone's retirement higher, quite frankly. So the structure is something that a lot of districts do prefer and are moving to, so that's there. Now, it is an increase, and one of the things that the superintendent I know wanted to point out, and you can certainly ask her questions about it, but as we scroll to the bottom, you're going to see that there's a trade-off here. And that trade-off proposal is that the superintendent's current contract has what we often call a Me Too type of an agreement. And the superintendent has actually proposed that that be taken out of the contract, that it not be realized, that it be waived. And she wants to suggest to you that she's making that concession in order to have the administrator contracts that are more consistent between each other and have a consistent approach and one that provides more clarity and then also removes the Me Too concept from top senior administrators who really have the ability to negotiate their own contracts, not necessarily relying on Me Too for more subordinate employee negotiations. So that is, just to give you an idea, that was tagged to, that Me Too is tagged to the AMACE contract, so whatever the negotiated increase for AMACE might be for 22-23, that's waived. That won't take place, even though it would otherwise be status quo under last year's signed contract. I'll show that to you in a minute. It's down below, but I think it's important because it goes hand in hand to a certain extent with this new salary schedule concept, 3.5%. That paragraph there that just came up on the screen just explains the 3.5%. Number 3 is a proposal by the superintendent that there be an addition. This does not exist in her current contract at any amount. She does not have a graduate stipend. And the superintendent is, again, with the interest being from the superintendent that there be equity and consistency with other employees of the district, in particular administrator employees and teachers, where stipends are a feature of compensation. She is proposing that she be awarded or afforded a doctorate stipend in the amount of $67.34, which I believe is a similar percentage to other stipends when they're compared to the salaries of those particular employees, particularly administrator employees. Number 4, the proposal under number 4 is not really a change in compensation per se. It is the same potential performance bonus that's already in the current contract, the one that is being proposed for 21-22, and all it does is it creates some clarity around the amount that might be. In other words, instead of being open-ended, well, it could be up to 10% or it could be 20, I mean, that's not on the table. The proposal is to show that it's within a relatively narrow range, 1% to 4%. But that's purely discretionary on the board. The board's not obligated to grant any performance bonus. That's subject to your determination as to the quality of the superintendent's, maybe the superintendent's work for the prior year. And then finally, the last portion there, and it flips by too quickly, I'll go back up, is under B, this was the wording from the current contract that provided for the Me Too clause that was going to track with the administrative unit, the AMACE group, and that's being taken out. So that will not impact, that will actually reduce potential available compensation and will not take place when that increase, presuming there is an increase negotiated for AMACE, there will not be a bump, if you will, to the superintendent's contract as a result of that. So that is a summary. Again, I present this as a draft at this point. It is obviously subject to the board's deliberation, discussion. The process that I'm proposing, Mr. Board President, is that the board have its discussion, obviously open here for everyone to listen to, deliberate. If you have questions of the superintendent about the concepts in this agreement, I urge you to ask those questions. At the end of that discussion, my suggestion for purposes of efficiency would be that you entertain a motion to approve the addendum as a whole. And depending on the outcome, if it should be that that motion fails, then I would propose you then evaluate each of the proposed sections one by one. Entertain motions for each section to determine the board's intent and desire with regard to each of the items. You'll do it any way you want, and the board can decide. That would just be my recommended process. So with that, I'm going to sit down and let you go about it. What will happen, though, is if the board takes a vote, remember that's just a vote to, if it's to approve it, then and as a whole, then in essence we have agreement in principle, I believe. Correct, Madam Superintendent? We would have, if the board approved this addendum, we would have agreement in principle, and I would step out. I would ask for a recess. I would step out, go over it, finalize the document for the superintendent's approval as the other party. If the board proposes changes to the, in other words, a counter proposal in its deliberations, then I would then again request that there be a short recess so that I could finalize the board's proposal using your technology here in the district, and then present that for the superintendent's consideration. And depending on how that goes, we would have to return. So in essence, it's like a negotiation of the salary in open session. It's very, very transparent. Okay, are there any questions?
Mr. Gant, I have a question before we dive into this. I'm going to put you on the spot here. It's my understanding that this is a public document.
Well, I don't agree that it's a draft at this point. It's my draft document that I have brought as a result of negotiations and a negotiation proposal. I think once the board determines takes a vote and determines what it wants its proposal to look like, and I render that in the form of a counter proposal, I think it does become a public document, and it's certainly subject to disclosure. Certainly the final document before it's ratified is also a public document, and the ratified document is. But at this point, this is a draft that I created in confidential discussions with the superintendent in proposing the contract. So I do not agree that it is yet a public document until it becomes something that the board has had an opportunity to consider, deliberate upon, and essentially put its mark on.
Thank you for the clarification. My next question ties into that. Where does that leave this board if this is not publicized or published publicly 72 hours before a board meeting?
Well, it wasn't available as a public document. It wasn't distributed to the board 72 hours before.
Correct.
See, the obligation under the Brown Act is that documents that are forwarded to the board as part of the board agenda 72 hours before are also to be made public. If such documents go to the board less than 72 hours before, then they can be made available at a request. If the document comes into existence at the board meeting, then and becomes a public document at the board meeting, then it can be made available upon request. But it wasn't a public document. It wasn't distributed for board consideration prior to the board meeting tonight, and therefore it was not subject to disclosure publicly. The document you're looking at was a draft. It was a draft that reflects just an initial proposal and a negotiation. Those types of documents are generally not distributed as public records at that sensitive stage.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Actually, I do. Mr. Gant, can you scroll down to the very start of the document?
Back to the top or to the bottom?
The top of it, sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
So again, this is an item that was on the last board agenda, and it got tabled till this particular meeting. And should the date there be corrected to reference this meeting instead of June 28th?
Thank you for noticing that, yes, and this was taken off my computer. That is actually the date that I drafted the document. So as I said, when we go and we put the board's proposal, in other words, when I go through to make the counter proposal, I will change the date. But for your reference, that's the date I was working on it, because it's my draft.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Can we talk about the stipend part of it? I haven't seen that before in superintendent's contracts, and can we talk about the reasoning behind that or the thoughts behind it?
I'm going to just step back at this point. I'm here to scroll at this point, but I don't have any substantive comments on the proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Boone, for clarifying that, for asking that clarifying question. On my original contract, that is a language that was board approved last year. For superintendents, for performance-based, this is also an accountability piece. If the superintendent does perform to a level that is satisfactory or higher, the board may consider a compensation in the form of a stipend. That has also been added with board approval to all the senior administration now. Again, the board has complete control of that. They can choose to give 0 or up to 4. I think it's an opportunity to validate hard work, at the same time put the onus on the performer that you have a stake in this work. You just can't hold status quo.
Any other questions from the board? If not, do I hear a motion? As Paul Gant has stated, we can vote on basically the draft as a whole, or we can vote on each one of the changes in this addendum. And what is the pleasure of the board? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to vote on it as a whole.
Motion to approve the draft as presented. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, President Davis. Trustee Criddle, can you restate your motion? It seemed like that was something different than I heard President Davis.
Motion to approve, voting on it, the draft as a whole.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Doug Criddle to accept the draft as presented, and we have a second from Randy Rasmussen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have 1, 2, 3,
Yes.
4, 5. The draft is accepted as written.
Mr. Board President, just for clarity for the minutes, can we state the vote, please, and identify the vote, voting in favor and otherwise?
The vote for the addendum as presented is 6-0 in favor.
Okay. And just because we have one member absent, maybe identify the member just who did not vote because he is absent.
Frank Crawford is absent.
Thank you. So at this point, what I would propose would be a brief recess, which will allow me to finalize the proposed board document and meet with the superintendent to confirm that all elements are as expected, And then, assuming that the superintendent does agree, invite her to put her signature on the document. I bring it back to the board after the short recess so that the board can see the final document. I will make a few copies too to bring back just in case any member of the public would like to have a look. And then, absolutely. And then I would leave it to you to, go ahead and take up further action, which would be final action. If you wish, the board can take then final action to ratify the contract.
We will have a 15-minute recess.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Skip's Marysville Music Cafe, with lessons, in person and personalized. Instruments including guitars and amps, horns, strings for instruments, and a myriad of music and sound equipment. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe.
I call the meeting back to order. Mr. Gant, would you please lead us in the next piece of this?
Yes.
The contract?
Okay, so we're returning now after the recess, and I have gone over the proposal with Dr. Asrani. It did mirror her proposal, so not a lot to review. Dr. Asrani has accepted the board's offer for the addendum and has executed her signature on the document. So at this point, it would be up for the board to consider whether to ratify the addendum to the contract, formally ratify the document.
Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Gant? If not, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Davis, I'm sorry. Mr. Gant, on the very last page, we still have the June date.
I thought we had all the dates were removed, and I apologize for that. Oh, yes, I missed that last notation, because this was going to be
I see it.
simply on the side.
Yeah, sign it again.
From Dr. We can make note.
Mr. Gant, can you please talk into the microphone for the recording? Thank you.
Yes. Can I collect that, Angela, and fix it? So, if I may, take just a moment to correct that and reprint. I apologize for the delay.
Okay. Thank you.
We're going to recess again.
We're in recess.
the contract as written.
Motion to approve. We're out of recess. Paul Gant?
Well, hopefully this delay will mean the temperature has gone down more outside by the time you get out of here. That said, I have corrected the document so that it correctly reflects the date on which you are considering it, so it will show the board's ratification date at the bottom of the addendum. And with that, I think you were about to entertain a motion on this one.
Are there any questions for Mr. Gant? If not, do I hear a motion?
Motion to ratify the contract as written.
Motion to approve the addendum to the superintendent's contract. Do I hear a second? Second. Second by Doug Criddle. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0 with Frank Crawford absent. So the second personnel action we have is 16.2, Chief Business Official.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gant. Are you just going to just show us what that is? Or
Yeah, I'll be happy to scroll through it again, and just introductory-wise, this is a proposal that I believe is being brought by the superintendent to amend the contract of employment for your chief business official, Jennifer Pasaglia, who is, there are a few changes here, and I can scroll down as Dr. Asrani takes you through the proposed changes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Board, for considering this proposal, again, in order to make sure that my entire cabinet is consistent in how we look at our salaries, how we look at our compensation, and the terms of our contract. In front of you is Ms. Pasaglia's contract. The changes I'm recommending is a change of title first from Chief Business Official to Assistant Superintendent, Business Services. The term of the contract remains valid from 2022, ending in 2024, because she already has an active contract for 3 years. The compensation, as you can see, is for the 2 upcoming years, and it is exactly in the same compensation amount as the new assistant superintendent contracts that you've approved back in June of this year. So that is the only change that I see here, but also on, if you flip the page over to 2B, in 2B, we ask for the same adjustment to salary compensation for a good performance, 1 to 4%. Ms. Pasaglia did not have a Me Too contract, term on her contract, in the current contract, so that is not here either. And again, this adjustment of 1 to 4% compensation annually is done at the superintendent's recommendation for performance. And there's a graduate degree stipend that has also been added. And the other terms of the contract have not been changed. So the terms here, in a nutshell, is a change of title to assistant superintendent. The compensation salary, as you see, the base salary range, which now matches those of the other 2 assistant superintendents. And then the compensation for good performance, 1 to 4%, which is consistent with the contracts of the assistant superintendents that were approved in June.
Are there any questions for Dr. Asrani or for Paul Gant? If not, do I hear a motion?
Sorry, President Davis. If we could look at page 2, item 2, E2. The second
B2.
sentence.
Yes.
Second sentence, Assistant Superintendent Services. Do we need to have business services in there?
Yes.
The title?
There's a typo. Can we write that in? With the edit made to the document, it can still be considered that this time the document can be finalized and signed subsequent, if it is once the board votes.
Are there any other questions? If not, do I hear a motion?
With the edit to the document, I move to approve.
Jeff Boom has a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hasty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0 with Frank Crawford absent. Thank you. Now we're at 17.1, and we have a comment from Ms. Stiegel.
While we're waiting there, I would just like to publicly thank Mr. Gant for your support in this process, because it is quite new, and thank you very much, Mr. Gant.
Thank you very much. Ms. Stiegel?
So, Mr. Davis, I was actually in the midst of texting, so I assume we are down to the contract with the CDE Foundation, since I was summoned up here, and that's where I had another comment card. The only thing that I kind of had to say here was Mr. Criddle and I both, I think, echoed each other's comments at the last board meeting about the LMI conference in San Diego, and the idea of we are certainly hopeful that we didn't leave what happened there, you know, like the proverbial what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We were certainly hoping that what happened in San Diego didn't stay in San Diego. And I'm somewhat troubled in the idea that it's kind of starting already to feel that way. And this particular agenda item is one of the reasons for that feeling. This is in regards to the LMI, for which Yuta had a team go as part of a district team to the LMI. And Mr. Davis, you're aware because you gave up a weekend to be with us as well. And I knew absolutely nothing about this until I got the agenda. And so still, even in looking at the attached documentation, I'm not sure exactly what this is supposed to be for or what exactly it's supposed to do. I don't know what my team and I have been possibly committed to. There's been zero communication with us. And so this is one of the issues that we had talked about at the LMI of trying to rectify these type of situations. So I'm sincerely hoping that maybe, I'm trying to be the eternal optimist here, that maybe this is kind of a fluke thing, that it's, oh, you know, it's the summer and we're all busy and we're going to do better. But it would be nice to have some idea before these things crop up. Being surprised when the agenda comes out every time is not exactly where any of us would like to be. It doesn't help on the union front, and it doesn't help me on the union front to be able to help the district, much less the board, much less my members. And so if we could kind of get on track with what we had talked about in San Diego as far as having some knowledge, some warning, some input as far as some of these things just showing up as a surprise on the agenda. It would be really nice if we could get there sooner rather than later. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board? If not,
Do we have a presentation by staff to talk to us about this? About this item?
We don't have a presentation for the CD Foundation agenda item, but this comment actually concerns me. When we were at LMI, it was made very clear that we would work with CD Foundation. In fact, I believe Ms. Stiegel also reached out to the gentleman who then also contacted me because he had heard from Ms. Stiegel and had asked that, what exactly do you want us to do with you? And we said to them, we want to start on the right step. It is very important for us that when we have the first meeting that we committed to at LMI, that the labor partners and district leads will sit together, that we want you to tell us how the conversations start building trust and transparency. And so the contract has been signed with CD Foundation to help us with that. And so I will say that we made a commitment to work with the CD Foundation to bring back the LMI learnings that we had and that we should be pushing forward. So at this point, this is what the contract is about. And there's a understanding that that's a work we'll be doing moving forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azrani. I make a motion to approve item 17.1, the contract with CDE Foundation.
do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Allison. Motion by Randy Rasmussen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Now we're 18, presentation on the Early Literacy Support Block Grant Annual Report for the 2021-22 for Cedar Lane Elementary.
Thanks, Russell. Good evening, President Davis. How is everybody? Superintendent Azrani, members of the board, cabinet, public. My name is Rebecca Evers. I'm the principal at Cedar Lane Elementary, and it's my pleasure to present to you. This is an annual update. It is facilitated off of a state form. They provide us the information. They ask for us every year to give them an update on how the grant is going. How are your planned events and activities being implemented? Were they helpful? Analyze the data and then make suggestions for changes for next year. So a short little summary on how our grant's been going on our first year. You got me? Thanks, Russell.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Evers, principal at Cedar Lane Elementary School, and it is my pleasure to share with you the Early Literacy Support Block Grant, or ELSB, Annual Report for the 2021-2022 school year. The California State Department of Education identified Cedar Lane as one of 75 schools with the highest percentage of third grade students achieving far below grade level on the 2018 and 2019 State English Language Arts Summative Assessment. During the 2021 school year, Cedar Lane developed a literacy team composed of TK through third grade teachers and administrators to write and submit the ELSB grant application. The ELSB Literacy Action Plan was approved and resulted in Cedar Lane being awarded a little over $613,000 to be utilized over a 3-year period, with year 1 commencing with the 2021-22 school year. The ultimate goal of the ELSB grant is to see improved student learning outcomes through the development and implementation of research-based literacy instruction and support programs in grades TK through 3. The Cedar Lane School Site Council authorized funding to extend the ELSB Literacy Action Plan to include grades 4 through 6, creating a school-wide focus on improving literacy instruction for all students. The Literacy Action
Plan has 3 goals. Goal 1 focuses on phonics instruction. Strategies implemented to achieve this goal include professional development to improve reading instruction. 19 teachers, 2 administrators, and 2 literacy coaches attended the online Elementary Reading Academy facilitated by CORE, the Consortium on Reading Excellence. This year-long course is based on the science of reading and learning the 5 critical components of reading instruction in order to teach all students, including English learners and those with word reading difficulties such as dyslexia, to be strong readers. Additional strategies include on-site instructional coaching through CORE, purchasing and implementing WonderWorks, Dibbles, and Heggerty Supplemental Intervention Curriculum, and developing an MTSS schedule that provides each student with 30 minutes of targeted reading intervention each day. Goal 2 identifies explicit vocabulary instruction as a focus for the 22-23 school year, and progress on this goal will be reported at the end of the next school year. Goal 3 focuses on the use of a reliable and common assessment tool. Dibbles, the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills, was purchased and implemented. In August of 2021, professional development was provided for teachers, paraeducators, administrators, and literacy coaches. Dibbles is a research-based set of procedures and measures for assessing the acquisition of literacy skills consistent with many of the Common Core state standards in reading, especially those for the foundational skills. Grade level collaboration, professional learning community, and response to intervention meetings are held throughout the year to facilitate data analysis and progress monitoring to ensure the interventions implemented are effective. To support literacy training and education for parents, Cedar Lane hosted PK, or Parents Institute for Quality Education, facilitated in Spanish this fall and honored 15 parent and family graduates in October of 2021. Literacy nights were challenging due to COVID guidelines and staffing shortages. However, we hosted family night at our spring book fair, and that was very successful. 21-22 is the first year we have used Dibbles. We assessed 3 times this school year. At the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year data was collected and reviewed. Overall, students' proficiency levels were static, except in grades K, 5, and 6th grade. However, when you look at each student individually, all students demonstrated growth. Analysis of the data indicates our students are demonstrating growth in reading skills. However, our students need to grow at a faster pace to close the achievement gap and read at grade level by the end of grade 3. Recommended adjustments to the ELSB literacy plan for the 22-23 school year include hiring a full-time site-based literacy coach, increasing our core coaching days, extending Heggerty phonics instruction grades TK through 3, purchasing and implementing second step social emotional learning curriculum, providing extra hours for our paraeducators to support Tier 1 instruction in grades K-3, and continue with our professional development plan to include Dibbles progress monitoring, Heggerty phonics instruction, WonderWorks intervention curriculum, and second step SEL curriculum. I would like to give special thanks out to our literacy academic team members for developing this literacy action plan and implementing and managing the grant. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to sit down and talk with you about all the wonderful things going on at Cedar Lane Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Yes.
The one question I'd have is, do you have any kind of an idea why your 3rd grade went backwards?
That is something that we're going to be working with our teachers. We'll bring this data back. Also in August, I'll be bringing back some of our state data that is very similar to the data that you've seen here. What I can tell you is that when you look at kindergarten and you look at 5th and 6th grade, and then you look at their state data that just came out, the 6th graders did an incredible job, and those teams have almost completely, they haven't closed the achievement gap, but they have gotten to the level of learning loss. So if we came and when we went out on COVID and we were at a particular reading level, those grade levels have now come back, we've dipped way down, and they've been able to close that learning loss gap. What those teams did, they were just a really tight, collaborative unit. And they worked with the coaching through CORE very closely. They took the recommendations for the Wonders implementation at the Tier 1 in the classroom level and really worked on implementing those suggestions. Not all grade level teams did that. And so we have analyzed that with the academic team. We'll bring this information, the Dibbles data, the Renaissance data, and the state data will come back to teachers, and the grade level teams will do an analysis of their data and have that conversation with themselves. What is our data telling us? What do we think happened? What can we plan for next year? Talk to some other teams on what they felt worked. One of the other things that we did with the 5th and 6th grade team is we sent them out to another school that had a really, in our district, that has a very solid collaborative team. And they went and they worked with them and observed with them and came back with some incredible ideas and implemented within their collaborative team that had very strong results for them.
Overall, it's fantastic. I mean, that's just an odd, this, all the other numbers are through the roof, and there's just a third grader. So I'm hoping that lessons learned.
Yep.
And that's what this grant is about, is to help us learn how to teach our children. And I remember all those adults that were here earlier in the last school year. I assume that a lot of those came from your program. And I've never seen so many excited people to learn English. So congratulations.
Thank you. The team's doing a really wonderful job. And the core coach that we're working with, the staff love her. They've really come together as a group and have already started making plans for what they want to work on next year as teams.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, congratulations. We were talking earlier about this, and I'm just impressed. Right there, the list of names on there, it literally takes a village.
Good folks.
And this is why I'm an educator. I don't know if you know, I'm also a teacher, different county, but that's why I love teaching.
And that is the team that wrote the grant the year before I got here. That's the team that meets together as a leadership group at Cedar Lane Elementary and implements the grant on site. That's also the team that meets with CORE and the state level in order to learn more and to bring it back to their peers. So they're a really solid team.
Very cyclical, yeah.
Yep.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our last new business item is 19.1, approve the change order number 1 with CORE Construction for the Arboga Elementary School Expansion Conversion TK8 project. Do we have representatives from CORE?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Davis. We have Jordan here with CORE Construction and Zoe with PBK to help talk us through this change order.
Perfect. And just click through on there. There we go. Perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, good evening. So thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm Jordan Kuski again with CORE Construction. I'm just here tonight to present to you 3 items which were added scope, kind of walk you through the history of why those have come about and what those include. So it helps if I click. All right, so the first item on there was addressed in ASI number 15. That's an adjustment along Broadway Road due to county concerns over water draining, or stormwater drainage over there. So last June we started up on site, and beginning of August we completed the front parking lot for staff and students to come in. That ended up in a total of 89 new added parking stalls there on site. Improved that. And I wasn't involved in the very early history of this with the county and communication there. So I was going to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong on anything there, but I'll give you kind of my understanding of the recap, and so you can back me up when I start stumbling along. So I believe that PBK, when the plans were developed, they reached out to the county, and I think there was no initial comments, if that sounds correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to touch this?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it.
So normally on a district property, because you are a public entity that is distinct from the regular county, you're not required to go through local building code or approval processes. You go through the Division of State Architect for any approval or site adjustments. So this project was taken through DSA, the Division of State Architect, for any changes that were modified to the site, including the parking lot. All items were approved by DSA, and within the approved documents, one of the items is the requirement for CORE to go for an encroachment permit as in order to accommodate increased parking and bring all the roadways and parking elements onto the district's property itself, we needed to adjust the drive aisles. In doing so, you have an interface with the public way. So at that point, that's when the county comes in and gets a look at the documents. In their review initially, no comments were made on the original encroachment permit that was filed when this work was initially started. That permit sat with the county and the work was completed on time for the start of school. At that point, construction continued along. We had a couple site visits out because they weren't, I think, fully understanding the scope of the work that was being completed on campus. And there were no concerns raised at that initial site visit. As you will recall, way back when, in December, we did have a rainstorm that was quite significant. At that time, there was ponding upon the public way. Originally, this had not occurred as, with the existing site conditions, what rainwater from that public way flowed off the street onto the district property, across the district property, onto the community center, and then back onto the district property as it made its way onto that ditch that runs along RD 782. So, with these adjustments, that pathway was taken away. Normally, it's highly recommended and best practice to deal with all stormwater that falls within a site on your site itself. All the grade adjustments that were made on the site were done with that intent. So, with the regrading, water was no longer permitted to flow across your site, but any rainwater that fell on your site was handled on your site. It wasn't permitted to flow on into any of your neighboring properties. With the stormwater event that occurred, this became apparent with the ponding of the water, and so the county came back out and requested that a couple of adjustments be made along Broadway Road to accommodate the stormwater drainage.
Perfect. And that's where we come in. So, yep. So, worked on the design side to just make sure you had the most value. Value, basically, your easiest solution
Excuse
to
me,
accommodate.
could you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes.
Or raise the mic up, please.
Perfect. I apologize. So, Zoe and PBK and their civil engineer worked to basically come together and put together a design that would meet the county's requests. And we do think it's the most feasible and economical design. So this would be the first piece to the change order, is essentially to comply with the county's requests there. So
I guess the question I have is that this area is flat, and there is no drainage of any kind on Broadway provided by the county, other than passive, wherever it evaporates or whatever. And here, we've already gone in and designed the parking lot to self-drain within itself. And that area that is flooding is coming off the county road as much as it's coming off of us.
I didn't include the top right. You can kind of see, and essentially we haven't changed the grades on the road. So this by all means isn't us coming to you and saying, hey, we'd really like to, be a lot of fun to do this work. It's the county coming in and requesting this.
Yeah. So the way the road is profiled, just with the nature of the area, it has a little bit of a turtleback, if you will, to it. So the water drains to either side. In some areas, you'll see there's a ditch that's along either side of the road, and that's intended to catch any water and direct it appropriately. This site is a bit unique in that condition wasn't in place along the road. I do know when we were originally looking at the development of the project and how we could maximize the parking on site, we did dig through all archives that were available to us. There was, at one time, the proposal to continue the Arboga Road along the west side of your site, essentially where that large ditch drainage is. That was never put in place. Why, I cannot speak to that. I wasn't around at that time with this project. But in looking at any future improvements to this road, that's when the county would come in and put in appropriate drainage as well as sidewalks, because currently right now there aren't any, so your public way ends at the road itself. There's no extension or path of travel off your site.
Well, at least from my observations out there, and there's others that have more experience with it, whenever it rains out there, that road has water on it, especially when you have any kind of a heavy rain out there. And given the design that you guys have put together on the rest of that parking lot, it's just that one end that's pretty flat. And it just seems sad that we didn't think of that at the time we were constructing. And I know you have parking issues and all kinds of issues while we're still running the school. So I don't know how much you could have done out there, but it just seems like here we are at the 11th hour having to fix something that might have been able to have been fixed a lot cheaper if it had been handled earlier in that design.
To speak to that, in terms of drainage off the public way, that's not something that is typically addressed within any school site project because it is not your property at that time. So that's normally something that's always handled by the county. The where we get in a little bit of the gray zone is with the relocation of the driveways. At that point, you're connecting into the public way. So that's where the county has grounds to make requests and unfortunately, in this case, ask for additional items that do affect the design in a way that I do agree. It would have been great to know at the start of the project if we had heard from the county at an earlier date, because, you know, as I was saying, Jordan and Core did submit the encroachment permit early at the time this work was taking place. We do not know why it was never processed by the county, but their concerns came at a later date after the rainfall event. So initially, there was no concern raised. Had there been, we would have been, you know, very flexible at adjusting it. We did meet with the county a couple times to see, is there any avenue to which we can make this drainage work with a couple of simple curb cuts. Unfortunately, that's not the case. A curb cut would be essentially be removing sections of the curb, which would allow some infiltration onto your site. Unfortunately, with the way the site is drained at this time, in order to comply with code to keep all your stormwater on your site itself, it wouldn't flow across your site anymore.
And the sidewalk, where is that going to be placed? Is it going to be in place in that landscaped area?
In moving to the next slide, that deals with that a little bit more. So with any sidewalk placements for a school, we want to be very careful in terms of their placement because we want to avoid as much intersection of vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. And looking at the layout and the fact that there's not currently a pathway that we can connect into, we really tried to take keys from what was there before, and there was a long linear pathway from Broadway down to the admin, and so that's kind of where we're trying to replicate that with our proposed new sidewalk.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from board members?
Yes, I have. Does this work? There we go.
Just so that I understand here, because it's a little hard to hear you guys talking. Is this happening on county property?
So you'll notice there's a dashed line that runs east to west across the top of the screen. That is your property line. At that point, anything across from that, that's essentially county property. It's basically their space to do any sidewalk improvements, et cetera. As the conditions currently were, your site moved up to abut the existing road in that zone, and so our design approached it in a similar manner to extend your landscaping up to abut that existing road.
So in essence, we're sharing that property, in essence?
Yes.
So like if this work is to be completed, then it would be benefit to the county as well?
If there were a sidewalk there at this time, I would say yes. Or if you were doing more work on the road, I would say yes. At this time, it really favors the district.
Hypothetically, on a time frame, if we were to agree to this, what type of time frame are we looking at on your side for start to completion date?
I'll let Jordan speak to that.
Sure. We are game plan for it because kids are coming back and we don't want to impact pick up and drop off because it's a very busy parking lot. Our game plan is to put in the stormwater sleeve, which would be going across. I'm going to jump back to give you a visual on this. We can't see my mouse, sorry. So right in the main entrance there, top left of, middle. Across the main entrance, the driveway there, we have a stormwater sleeve that's going underground there. So our plan is to saw cut, put that in, pave over before kids ever come back, and then really just due to the fact that we're moving on some other items and I can't schedule our subcontractor for the earthwork fast enough to guarantee it's done before kids come back. With that sleeve in place, we can work in those aisles, we can put up traffic control to really minimize any impact on pickup and drop off for staff and students. So I apologize to keep moving from the microphone. Realistically, I would say probably by the end of August, I think that could all be implemented. Would the work that you guys are proposing, would it resolve the standing water issue and guarantee that would resolve the issue? Just speak up now.
With a similar storm event to what happened previously, yes. If we have a huge storm, there's going to be ponding water across all roads. At that point, you're relying more on what the system is working at as a totality. So at that point, you're dealing with what, RD 782, what their system has that capacity. So yes, it will handle the ponding that happens along the road, but it's going to be in proportion to how much rainfall event occurs. We are additionally recommending, and we've worked with Jennifer, to prepare a letter with your legal counsel that basically delineates that at what point in time the county does come through and do make road improvements, they take responsibility for their water because it is highly irregular to have the district asked to be handling stormwater off of a public way. So it wouldn't be a condition that would be in place in perpetuity, but just until the improvements were done along Broadway Road.
For public record, out there it's Reclamation District 784, not 782.
Thanks.
And yeah, when you get a major storm, it doesn't matter whose road it is.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No?
So Joe, I did have, on the crosswalk, so again, Jordan, we're thinking about, all we're having to do is cut that curb out in front of the school where the mailbox is, kind of we talked about, and then we're going to drain that into the drain water.
Yes, sorry. I'm going back to the storm drain, correct? And microphone, sorry.
Sorry. I said sidewalk and jumped to the other one.
Not the most polished, I apologize. So yes, what we'd be talking about, they actually, so they are going to saw cut the curb right there, right as soon as basically cars and parents are pulling up in there. We're going to saw cut curbs. They're going to excavate, or saw cut, excavate pavement. trench, drop in their pipe for the stormwater there, backfill, pave over. So that work is basically, we are not going to be in the way of parents and staff's cars once that starts, or once that's complete. And that realistically is probably 2 to 3 days that we know we can finish, maybe as soon as next week. So.
Okay. And then now we'll jump forward to the crosswalk.
Perfect.
So the crosswalk is at the east end of the parking lot, correct? So what the county is saying, at some point in time, they're going to put a crosswalk across Broadway onto 4th Street there.
So,
And they're saying that we need to have access from that crosswalk that they're proposing to build onto our site. And is that little curve, is that the road that goes back into the preschool?
yes, that's the road that goes in, and actually as part of the ASI and discussions with the county, we were asked to relocate the crosswalk at this time and black out what's currently there. With the driveway relocation, you're actually seeing on the leftmost curvature of the drive, you'll see 2 vertical lines. That is the existing crosswalk. We've been asked to black that out and repaint it in alignment with the new walkway to campus.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll just call out the elephant in the room for just a second. I do have a question. If this is tabled, because I have some just questions and such that I don't think can be answered tonight, but if we table this, would this hold up the ability for students to come back to school?
Sorry, I'll take that one. No, I don't believe so. I don't believe the county can, it's not going to affect your school. It shouldn't really affect your parking lot apart from any county possible actions. I think Zoe can speak better than I can.
It would be in the district's best interest to proceed with the county's request for work. They have been, besides the request for additional work, very flexible with the construction timeline and work that's been done up to date. With the drives that were put in place without the approved encroachment permit, they could have come back and made it quite difficult. They've been very, understanding and flexible with the course of the project and the general intent that this is to improve the school site. So they may come back with some additional comments, which would prove some difficulties.
With all due respect, ma'am, we are talking about $250,000 change order at the 11th hour. So that's where my concerns are. So,
I would say, if I may, that there's a third item on this change order, and I think that third item certainly is time sensitive if we're going to try to have our landscaping ready for students because of the pump issue that they're talking about here.
Yep. Yeah, we'll go into our last item there. So this is going to be an added booster pump. So per original plans, we basically were rolling, set up our irrigation, good to go, and the track and field did look very similar, or does look very similar to that in the photo right there. Once all of our irrigation was installed, the plans call for hydro seed, which is basically spray it all down, turn on those sprinklers, and let it grow. Unfortunately, it was discovered that the water pressure was much too low to actually, get your proper spread. You have some sprinklers on the farthest end there that have about a 10-foot diameter on there with no coverage on there. So Mr. Trower actually did reach out to the water district just to see, because these were oddly low static pressure at your point of connection, and it's kind of outside of what we typically see on anything. And they came back and just said, no, that's within the zone of tolerance there. And unfortunately, PBK has dug into a lot of other alternative options, and unfortunately, the only real option to solve that issue would be adding in a booster pump, which will basically up your pressure there, and then you do have more than enough pressure for the whole site. That will allow all the sprinklers to hit, allow us to hydro seed, and to have a real field.
You would have thought that whoever engineered the system, the first thing they would have done is check the pressure, check your flows, your pipe size, your diameter. In order to build a irrigation system, those are the first things you have to know always. So who checked that to begin with, and what's the cost of the booster pump going to be, and how big is it?
In terms of checking with the pipe size, we did have to have a fire flow test on the site, which also relates to the overall water pressure for design of the sprinkler system that's in Building C and also in the science portion of Building E. At that time, we did have a pressure check. We met what was required for the fire flow, and we did get another check at the time because we were concerned, just with the date of when we had the original fire flow test. With those numbers, there was the thought that it would cover the field. Unfortunately, it doesn't.
And then sorry to speak to cost.
So you believe that more pressure is going to allow the sprinklers to throw far enough, and not that the system's engineered with too much space between sprinklers? Because if it's engineered with too much space between sprinklers, you can put 80 pounds of pressure, you're never going to get what you need.
So one of the solutions that was looked at was adjusting the sprinkler placement. I believe it was schedule driven with the best path forward for the booster pump, and then also any future work that's done on campus. At some point, this will have to be addressed. It's unfortunate.
May I ask a clarifying question? I just wanted to make sure Mr. Duckriddle's question was answered. And the question was, I thought was pretty clear. If I may just restate, just for my response. The question was, if the board decides to table this item today, would it deter the school from opening on schedule? And if so, where would that obstruction occur? Is it just a landscaping bed, or?
Correct. For the booster pump, if we were to not move forward on this change and just move forward, we could attempt to hydro seed. You will realistically probably have some heads where there are about 10 feet of really no grass growing in there. The landscaper would have some issues with any warranty on that. But no, I don't believe it would affect school from opening. It would just be a bit browner field. Or a much browner field. But.
And with regards to the county work, we would want to go back and talk with them and see what they would be comfortable with. And I think as long as we have a date or time frame that we could present that this would be resolved, there would be some flexibility on their end that to allow students to come on back on campus on time.
I guess my question would be, by tabling this tonight, what more information would board members need to try to move forward?
Well, just on the hydroseeding, isn't September the better time to put hydroseed in? Just because with this heat, my understanding is September is much better for hydroseed.
It would be really, I think the major factor would just be lead time on the booster pump, just to get it here in time, because those are a couple months out. I have had them, it is ordered, it's not accepted, it can be returned, and it's still a few weeks away from acceptance on that. But no, my understanding is, speaking with the landscaper, is essentially they'll turn on those sprinklers, and they do own the maintenance on there until it is delivered. So agree that with this heat out there, it definitely would grow better in September. Really, the lead time on that, and honestly, just turning over a campus to you guys and having some green grass on that field is really the main concerns on that item.
Can you go back and tell me, you said there's going to have to be some things addressed later. What specifically were you talking about?
With regards to the work on the roadway, or?
With regards to the water system.
The booster pump or the?
Yeah, the booster pump. So I'm going to let Zoe jump in after that one. My understanding on that essentially is if you're looking at any campus improvements later on down the line, like where some of the portables are right now, that when any additional landscaping or irrigation was to be installed over there, it's going to be the same issue. So the booster pump should correct that and take care of your pressure for the campus from this point going forward.
So the booster pump we're putting in now is going to take care of what's there right now, but if we add anything later, then we're going to have to go with a larger pump?
No. It's sized to handle the water pressure that's requirements that are there now, the improvements, and then also any future. It's sized for your campus, but it's not oversized, if that's the correct way to put it.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, one more question. On the booster pump, so I'm not holding you to this or nor writing anything down. What's the typical cost ballpark? Are we looking for the booster pump and the installation ballpark?
Sure. I broke those ones out. So total for that work, you do have electrical that does have to be brought out. The switch gear is closer over to the kindergarten, so it does need to be routed through. In order to do that, there's going to be some trenching, saw cutting, et cetera, there. And then the booster pump is the majority of the cost on there. So basically all inclusive, to add that to the system, it's going to be just shy of $88,000.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
The breakdown for the cost of the project is on the very last page in your packet. And my concern is if we delay this, while we have an active crew out there, we're just going to have to pay more to get another crew out there. And as far as the whole booster pump challenge, they're adding an immense amount of watering that this campus did not have before. And I'm sure the people out there at OPED, with all those subdivisions coming in, are having their challenges just trying to keep the pressure up so they can flush a toilet. So it doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is this was not incorporated in the project from the get-go, and why it's come in this late.
Did it have prior issues?
What surprises me is something was engineered in today's day and age, and now it's not sufficient and it doesn't work right. We haven't even turned a valve on yet.
Well, well, the other issue is with looking at this, just standing back from a different lens. Nothing against you guys here is, $250,000 or $233,000 can buy 2 more teachers. I don't know. That's my 10 cents.
Are there any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item 19.1, approve the change order number 1 with core construction for our Bogue Elementary.
We have a motion by Randy Rasmussen. Is there a second? I second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion fails 4-2 with Frank Crawford absent.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Joe.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Skip's Marysville Music Cafe with lessons in person and personalized. Instruments including guitars and amps, horns, strings for instruments, and a myriad of music and sound equipment. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe.